we came into the house and it was like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. It was like, I don't know if we can do this. So the one thing I would say is I think it is important to let yourself grieve it because it's a thing and you do miss them, and missing somebody is a glorious thing.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am back this week with one of my favorite guests in the whole world, Rachael Carman. You guys know, I think I can maybe go about 6 months, Rachael, without having you on the podcast, but not much longer than that.
I always love being here.
It's so much fun. You are such a wealth of encouragement. You know, before I hit that record button, you and I sat and just talked for, 30 minutes or so. And I just love the encouragement that you bring to me. And it's so funny. Every time you open your mouth, I'm like, oh man, I wish I was recording already because the things that you say are such an encouragement that I want the audience to hear everything that you say.
Oh, you're very kind.
But I am excited to have you back. And this is kind of the grand finale of our series that we have been doing called Homeschooling Through the Years. And I could not think of anyone else better to fill this seat than you, my friend, Rachael Carman. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. We're going to have a great time chatting this week. But before we do, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. If you're looking for great, solid biblical worldview curriculum for any subject, any age, any grade, check them out at bjupresshomeschool.com. And if you're not sure what you need, call up one of their consultants and talk to them. They'll help walk you through the needs of your family. So bjupresshomeschool.com. And Rachael, I want to say thank you to you too. I know when we hit that middle break, we've got the Apologia promo in there, and we are so grateful to you and your husband, Davis, for just supporting the homeschool community with Apologia. You guys have so many great resources for homeschool families, and we are so very thankful for the resources we use in our homeschool. And I know many, thousands and thousands of others homeschoolers use them as well. So thank you for your ministry and so for supporting the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast and ministry. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, it's great to be in partnership with you because I think we share the same heartbeat just to encourage other families.
Yes, absolutely. So for those who maybe they're brand new to listening to the podcast and they don't know who you are, they're not familiar with Apologia Ministries, just introduce yourself and your family and what it is that you guys do.
Okay, so my husband and I have been married for 38 years, and we just celebrated meeting 38 years ago. So we met in June, and we got married in December. So,
Wow.
So that's pretty awesome. We have 7 children. We did not want to homeschool, and God brought us to a crossroads in our life and really gave us an opportunity to trust and obey in ways that we never would have imagined. And I'm so grateful. So we homeschooled for 26 years and we launched everyone 2 years ago, I think it was. I should know that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's coming up on 3 years, actually. Because Benjamin's going to be a junior. So yeah. Anyway, and now we're grandparents. We have 3 already married and another one coming up in August. And we have 9 grandkids. And so now we're on the other side watching our kids start homeschooling our grandkids. And I'm still loving picking out books. I still go to conferences when I speak and go and buy books for the grandkids and look at all the new stuff. So so we're on that side of it and just so grateful for all that God did.
That's so cool. It's so funny. I went to, they have those book boxes. People have them like in their front lawns or sometimes, at churches, things like that. And it's like a magnet. I can't not open the door to those book boxes and look to see what's inside. And so the other day, Lacey and I were driving somewhere and I was like, a book box. And so I pulled off the side of the road and I went and looked and there was the Velveteen Rabbit. And I don't have the Velveteen Rabbit. And I was like, I said, I have to get this. And Lacey's like, okay, I'm a little old for that. And I was like, not for you. It's for my grandkids.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But I'll read it to you if you want me to.
That's right. It's a good story. It's just a good classic story. People will throw away the best stuff. I mean, you have to stop. I mean, even at Goodwill, I was at Goodwill one time, and you got to go to Goodwill, right? I mean, there's so many great things there. And I went over to the book section because you got to go to the book section. Right. And I went over there. I love frames at Goodwill too, because they're just so expensive anywhere else. But you can get some really good frames at Goodwill. Anyway, I went over to the book section, and some homeschool mother had dumped her entire library because I know that those were just homeschool. And I was just like, yep, I'm taking that and that and that and that. And I distributed them between my daughters-in-law. But there was some really good stuff. So yeah. I'm all about the books.
Yeah. Oh, me too. It's so much fun. I've got tons and tons of kids' books. And sometimes Lacey will still let me read to her like Dr. Seuss stories and things like that.
Oh, I love those.
I love Dr. Seuss. Yeah. They're just super fun to read.
Yeah.
Well, as we've made our way through this entire series, and you and I had planned to record, I think it was back in like April or May, in preparation for this. And then I just said, you know what? I need to wait till I'm on the other side of Brooklyn's graduation, because this whole episode this week, we're going to be talking about the after years. So we've already talked about the preschool years, elementary, middle school, high school. And now what? Now we get to the graduation, to the after years. And then what do we do? And you've launched all 7 of your kids. And so I canceled our recording that we had scheduled. And I said, let's do it after, because I want to wait until I actually want to, process this for a few weeks and walk through the graduation, phase with her and all of that. And so I'm on the other side of that now. And man, it is hard. I am realizing that we can prepare ourselves kind of mentally, sort of, for our kids' graduation. But I feel like there's nothing we can really do to really prepare us emotionally for everything that comes with it, especially as homeschool moms, because we have such a different kind of relationship with our kids. And praise God, Brooklyn is still home. But lots of kids, they go off to college, or they get married, or they, go off to do some other, for some other adventure. And it's hard. It's almost like it just tears your heart out, because they're a piece of you. I feel like I'm missing a limb. Right now, as we're recording this, my girls are at church camp together. It's the first time ever since we've had both of them that they've both been away from us for this length of time. Wow. And they're gone for a week. It's not like they're gone for a month or a year. They're just gone for a week. But it's so weird. I almost don't know what to do with myself. I feel like I'm missing something. And so this week I want to talk about these after years. What does it look like? How do we prepare ourselves for it? How do we let go of our kids? How do we prepare our kids for these years after and going into their adult years? There are so many questions that we need answered. And so we're going to jump deep into all of this. We're going to take an early break, because I want to be able to just stay on the same, train of thought. And so let's break real quick, and we'll be right back and keep talking about it. Have you tried CTC Math yet with your child? Here's a testimonial from another happy homeschool mom. Amber said, "I'm absolutely thrilled with CTC Math. It's a rare find that I've used with my children for more than 5 years now. I have 6 children using CTC Math, and each child has found it easy to navigate and very applicable. Thank you so much for all that you are doing in providing quality math lessons for my children." If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. Are you looking for a homeschool curriculum that goes beyond textbooks and truly engages your children in the joy of learning? Apologia's award-winning curriculum is written by homeschool parents to specifically meet your needs and captivate your students with hands-on activities and experiments that make learning unforgettable. With an easy-to-follow, open-and-go format, Apologia takes the stress out of planning and provides a simple roadmap that can easily be tailored to your family's needs. Explore live classes or self-paced courses designed to accommodate every student's unique learning style. Elevate your child's education, spark their curiosity, and nurture a lifelong love for learning with Apologia. Discover Apologia today at apologia.com. We are back with Rachael. Man, as I look at these years and where we're at right now, talk about what it was like for you. And I don't know if you can separate launching your very first to launching your last and those in between. You had to do this 7 times, Rachael. I can't imagine 7 times. Yeah. But what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So launching our first one, if you've ever heard me talk, to give the talk, What About That Child?
Yeah.
My first one was that child. And so kind of a force of nature and always lots of energy and lots of passion. Like if he was in the room, everybody knew it, right? And he went to school in New York City, and we all went like as a family. We had done everything as a family for such a long time. I mean, it wasn't even a thought that we wouldn't go, right? And he did a gap year the year before. And so, but dropping him off in New York City was a thing. And we all went, and we came home on a bus, which is a whole nother story for another day. And
I don't know that story.
We came into the house, and it was like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. It was like, I mean, I don't know if we can do this, because on the one hand, he was just all of that, like this ongoing like hurricane constantly. And you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to miss that. Right. Just because it was always intense.
Yeah.
Sometimes good, some not so good, but it was always intense. And you just sort of felt like, oh my goodness, I don't know if we can do this. So the first week we drove to Co-op, I was driving the 15-passenger van, and our second son was sitting over here in the passenger side. And, Charles is in New York, and I didn't know what he was doing. I mean, I was just like, what? I don't know where he is this morning. I don't even know what he had for breakfast. And, he had gone to camps and he had done other things, but I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know where he is. I don't know where he is. I looked over at Anderson at a stop sign, and tears are just dripping off of his chin. And then I started crying. Then Savannah Ann started crying. Molly started. By the time we get to Co-op, we're just all a hot mess, right? I think, so the one thing I would say is, I think it is important to let yourself grieve it, because it's a thing. And you do miss them. And missing somebody is a glorious thing. Not missing is not a glorious thing.
Right.
The fact that someone would go and there would be an empty space and that you would miss them, that's a good thing. And so I think it was important for us all to cry and not just say, dry it up, get over it, but give each other a hug and acknowledge the loss and the miss. I think that was really important. I did not learn until years later. I'm trying to think of when this would have been. I don't think it was with Anderson. Maybe it was with Savannah Ann. But they were talking at sometime when they were back home. And he said, yeah, I cried myself to sleep the first few nights. Oh. And he said, you come out of a family of 9, 7 kids and 2 parents, and then you're in a dorm room by yourself and the silence echoes. And, there's oatmeal. Yeah, it's just, he said, to go from the glorious chaos to just me. Yeah. That was hard on him. So he had like the opposite thing than what we had. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He just had himself, and there was this silence. We kind of had both the same thing. Right. But we also had opposite things, because he didn't have anybody to hug or anybody to, give a tissue to. I mean, he was the Lone Ranger in the big city. So it was both of us. And I think it was really important. We sent him packages, and everybody would sign the card and everything. I would say, though, I don't think subtraction ever gets easier. I'm not a math girl, and subtraction was always a thing for me, and being dyslexic did not help that. And so I loved addition. I loved bringing a new person home. Yeah. Subtraction's hard. And every one of the kids, and I'm sure this is true for you with your girls, they bring something different to the table. Oh, yeah. And so, Brooklyn has her thing that she brings to the table, and you're just like, ah. And so every subsequent one, there's something else that's revealed, that's missed, that, So I think that that's valuable too, to have those conversations. What do you miss? What are you thinking about? If why don't you catch one of them crying, or you're crying, and to laugh about it and talk about it and give them a call. But I really, really think it's important to acknowledge the grief and that you miss them. Yeah. I think that's really important. Now, one year we launched 2 in the same year, and I'm just going to say I do not recommend that. So we took 2 different kids to 2 different institutions in 2 weeks. Oh, wow. and it was our second son and our oldest daughter. And so we'd already, I think we took, we took Savannah Ann first, and we had everything packed in the van and everything that we needed. And I had to run back in and get something. I mean, surely you can appreciate, you think you have everything until you realize you don't. And so I was back in the car, and Joseph ran up the stairs. So he's second to the youngest. And he was crying, and he said, "Mommy, please tell her she can't go. Please tell her she has to stay home." And I was just like, "Oh, buddy." I mean, the youngest.
Yeah.
And I don't think it doesn't matter if you have 21, if you have two, it's tough to be the youngest one, to be left, because you're launching these other ones off on their own adventure.
Yeah.
And it's tough in a different way for them, but then you're left in the hollowness. You're left seeing where they used to stand, or where they used to sit, or what they used to, and that's tough.
Yeah.
And then the youngest, when we dropped Benjamin off, someone gave us some really good advice, and they said, you need to do something when you drive away from campus, because with everyone else, we had each other to grieve with.
Right.
It was really hard on Ben to come home after he dropped off Joseph. Again, he's gone from being the youngest of 7 to being the only of 7.
Yeah.
I mean, silence echoes. That was tough. But then dropping him off, someone said, you're going to need to have something to do. And I think that was really good advice. We actually, for me, I like to get my stress out through physical activity. And so we went on a hike in the Smoky Mountains. And I think that's really what we both needed. To get out in creation. It was beautiful. We hiked, and the leaves were beautiful, and we were along a creek, and we got lost, and it was awesome. But I think that was a really good piece of advice that somebody gave us, just to sort of sit in it and reminisce and remember and laugh and cry. That was really good.
Yeah. So, I'm not to make this like a depressing episode or anything. I mean, it's the reality of that. And it's the reality of being a homeschool parent. Not to say that people who don't homeschool their kids don't miss their kids when they launch them.
Right.
But there's just a different kind of relationship you have with your kids when you're with them for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for their entire first 18 years. And I remember, though, when I was 19 years old, my parents moved to a different state, and they wanted me to go with them. And my life was in California, and I was like, I'm not leaving. They went to Idaho. I was like, why don't I go to Idaho? I don't know anybody in Idaho. And so I stayed back home, and I remember the day they left, and we all acted like we were strong, and we, were happy about this change. And I mean, they begged me to go with them. And I said, no, I can't do that. Yeah. But I remember just kind of pretending like I had it all together. I was fine. Yeah. I was going to make it on my own, and I did. But when they drove away, I just broke, and I was devastated because my parents were leaving me, But now I can look back and I can see God's hand in everything, the whole way my life unfolded. As a matter of fact, it was just a couple months after that Garrett and I started dating. Wow. 6 months later, I guess 2 months later we were engaged, and then 6 months later we were married. So within less than a year, we were already married. And I wouldn't have had that if I had gone with them, And so it's neat to just see how God's hand is at work even through the difficult times.
Yes.
And I know you've seen that with your kids as you've seen them move into adulthood and have kids of their own. You've gotten to see God's hand on their lives individually. And it doesn't mean it's been perfect in every way.
Right.
But what is the relationship like now with them as adult kids? And maybe talk a little bit about where you are with them now, how that was affected by the fact that you were home with them and had such a deep relationship with them. Because if you didn't have a deep relationship, it would have been, see you later, kid, call us at Christmas time. We might leave the lights on for you.
Maybe we won't. I do think you're hitting on something really substantial and significant. And that is the depth of the relationship as a homeschool mother is just different. I mean, I to your point, I don't think it means that parents who send their kids to an alternative schooling situation can't be as invested or as engaged with their children. I just think that I think it's more fundamentally required in home education. Maybe that's the way to say it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think the hardest part for me is for years and years and years, we read the same books. I knew where you were emotionally. I knew you had a disappointing soccer game. I knew that, you got lost on the way home, or you were in a fender bender, or, you hit the wrong key in your music lesson. I mean, I kind of knew where you were in your orbit.
Yeah.
And now I don't know. And that was just as hard as it is to have them all home and have them all in their immaturity, working through their own stuff, but you're all they're like individually working through their own stuff. And then as a family, you're helping them work through that stuff, like when one is in a bad mood, or one has something that's disappointing, or you do, or your husband does, you're still working it through together. You still got each other. You can still laugh. You can still encourage, scratch a back, give a hug, But when they start to go like this, it's so much harder to navigate. It's so much harder because they're all off doing their own thing. And because that's how it is, there's so much that you don't know.
Right.
And so the relationships, while still prioritized, I've been very grateful that the kids still call each other and text each other. It just warms my heart when I'll talk to somebody and they go, yeah, I'm just off the phone with so-and-so, or their family text thread, they'll say and they'll joke with each other. Or I got a note the other day from one of my brothers or sisters. I'm just like, that just makes your heart sing, right? But it's still different. And as the mom, I think, and I've said this to them, I think one of the hardest things about stepping into the whole adult parent of adult children, first of all, I don't think I did it really well. I wanted to do it really well. I think it's really tricky. I think it's trickier when they're older to know, because they're still all independent people with different needs and different communication styles. And it's hard though when you're the mom and when you were all together, everybody knew, and now like you and your husband hold knowledge about them as individuals that collectively they don't know.
Yeah.
And while that is an honor and a privilege, it can also be difficult when there's conflict and you're just sort of like, if you only knew X.
Right.
And yet I can't tell you X. And so you don't know X, and trying to navigate that well and encourage. I thought I was dependent on God. I thought I was in constant prayer when they were young, when they would come and tell conflicting stories, and I would beg God to give me discernment who's telling the truth, right? I'm still praying for that kind of discernment from God. How do I help them help each other and see each other and love each other and still give each other grace?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm very grateful that God continues to grow us through this sanctification process of parenting. Yeah. And this phase of adult children is a whole different kind of sanctification.
Yeah. Yeah. You never stop being a parent. You never stop. No. Now your role changes in how you interact with your kids, because you're no longer their authority.
Right.
And I find it interesting, where God says, children are to honor their, he tells them to obey their parents, but then he also talks about children honoring their mother and father. Right. Once they hit adulthood, now of course, and we're in this weird transition phase with Brooklyn where, because she's soon to be 19 and she's an adult. And so she's taking on adult responsibilities, but she's still a kid. And so we still do get to boss her around a little bit, but we have to be very careful and choose the things that we're intentionally instructing her in. Because it's, society has said, you're an adult, you can do what you want.
Right.
And so oftentimes it comes back to, well, you don't necessarily always have to obey exactly what we say, because you do have some free reign in your life, but I am asking you to honor us right now, especially since you're still living in our home and under our roof, and you have a little sister who's looking at everything that you do. And so far, so good, praise God. So far things are going really well, but I mean, again, we just graduated in May. So
but you're doing great, right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's like when you first become a parent to a baby, or a toddler, and that first toddler is so well behaved and compliant, and you're like, I got this under control. I'm such a good mom. And then he brings another one who's maybe not as compliant, and you're like, man, darn it. I thought I was so good at this discipline thing and raising kids. And so, well, we've got lots more to talk about, but we're out of time. Rachael, please tell our audience where they can find out more about you and your ministry and all that you have going on.
Perfect. So again, we own Apologia Ministries, and you can find us at apologia.com. I have a podcast, the Real Refreshment Podcast, primarily Bible study. And then Davis and I have Let's Talk Homeschool podcast, and you can find my blog at rachaelcarman.com.
All right. We'll put all those things in the show notes. Stay tuned at the very end to hear what's coming up next on the podcast. We love you guys. If you've not left a review for the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast, would you take just a minute and do that for us? And if you have not listened to our other podcasts, including my husband's new podcast, The Thinking Dad, check it out. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, The Thinking Dad. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you back here next time. Bye.
Laughing in the face of imposter syndrome and coming to you from the epicenter of manly overconfidence, I'm your host, Yvette Hampton, and you are listening to The Thinking Dad.
Even if we're able to push the evildoers and the totalitarians back for another generation, maybe if we work really hard, maybe even 2 generations, if they've got the young people, it's over.
I often think about Daniel's parents, who you don't hear anything about. But they must have laid down the foundation for Daniel to be able to go into Babylon and not fall.
We're in that very beginning part of the cycle for tough times. We've been fat and happy. We've been enjoying we're lazy because we enjoy so much freedom. We got all these blessings, and why would you go do the hard work? And so for a long time now, decades, we haven't had to do the hard work. We've been living on the fumes of previous generations paying the price. And we got to raise the bar and say, I'm willing to give more of my life, that's my time, more of my money, of course, that's our fortune, and more of my sacred honor, which is my reputation. I'm willing to put it all on the line. Every single one of us has to be willing to do that.
Join us for the first season of The Thinking Dad at thinkingdad.net.
One of the things that I think is unfortunate, and culture does this sometimes, and they talk about best years of my life were high school. I think as Christians, I think every year gets to be the best year of our life as we pursue God and see what He's doing and rest in His sovereignty and continue to expand our understanding of hope that we have, of salvation and His redemption. So I think as homeschool moms, we can think, the best years are behind us, the glory years, those golden days when we sat on the sofas and we read to each other and we tickled toes and we chased lightning bugs. And I think it's easy to get to the launch phase and you're like, it's all over.